who's one person that I know that I could get totally bought in with that has a little bit of sway. And I say, hey, you and me, we're going to lock arms. We're going to do this together. This is what we want. This is why we want this. This is how everybody's going to benefit. This is how you're going to benefit. And here's the things you can do to help. Are you game? Let's go.
Be sure to like and subscribe to the Eden Group podcast for more content empowering health and wellness entrepreneurs to make as much money as possible so they can change as many lives as possible. Let's get after it. Welcome to the Eden Group podcast. I'm joined today by Ryan Casey. Ryan is an entrepreneur. He owns 2 OrangeTheory locations here in Washington, where we're both located, one in Renton Highlands and the other one in Bothell. And he also is the owner of Real Business Solutions and the COO of The Lifestyle Investor. So Ryan, thanks for coming on to the show.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Awesome. Can you tell me a little bit about your background? Where did you grow up, and what was the first inkling you had that you'd be interested in business?
I grew up in Olympia, Washington, born and raised there, then went to UW. I was a pretty entrepreneurial kid from the start. So mowing lawns at 12. My dad kind of pushed me into stuff like, hey, you need to start making some money. And so like mowed lawns as a kid all the way till, I got my car when I was 16, and I would take it on Sundays to the empty parking lots and tell my little brother I'd let him drive around for $5 of gas money, So all sorts of stuff there. And then it's my parents did a shaved ice thing. My dad fell in love with shaved ice when they went to Hawaii when I was a kid. And so they said, this would be a good idea to do for the summers. So in the summers, we'd do 15 or 20 days, like those little small events. Yeah. So I was running the cash register when I was 9 or 10 years old until I was 17. And I remember telling them, hey, this isn't fair. I'm up here doing all this work, and my little brother and the other guys that are in the back just sitting down and filling up flavors. I'm working twice as hard, but we get paid the same. They said, well, if you can find a job where you're making more than what you're making as a 15-year-old or 16-year-old, then you can do that. So I found Cutco when I was 17, and I made like 40 grand when I was 18 years old. So that was the last time I did shaved ice with them.
That's huge. Yeah. Especially as an 18-year-old. So I had friends in high school who did Cutco. So this is door to door. You're selling knives, and these are high quality knives. Yeah, my parents still use Cutco today.
Yeah. So I started in 1997. I still have plenty of customers that still have all their stuff. And now I know people have had it for 30 or 40 years because you'd meet them. They'd already had it for 20 years. So
totally
all appointments. Yeah. You start with some friends and family, then it's all referrals. So it was nice because you didn't have to knock doors. But I mean, nowadays, funny hearing the kids because they're scared to pick up the phone. Nobody communicates on the phone. But that was really big for me because I was extremely shy, and that helped break me out of it. Like people that meet me today and I'm doing that, I say I'm very much an introvert, and they're like, what? And like I've had to learn through that. So becoming a manager, getting up on stages, teaching people, I did it for 22 years. So that was really helpful for me in the skill sets that I gained.
So that is surprising on the surface. How did you develop that muscle to withstand rejection at such an early age?
Inherently really competitive. I have to thank my parents for, a good bringing up of working hard, right? You work hard. And then my managers were super supportive. And the whole Cutco structure, it's like managers only get paid if your reps are selling. So you got to support them. But the good ones are really good about developing people and teaching skills. So that was the first time I really started reading for personal growth, because I saw a correlation of like, if I grew, I made more money. And I also liked being top. They do such a good job of recognizing people. Like my mom would say, did you see your paycheck? I'm like, yeah, but I got the next promotion, or like I was top on the like I cared more about the competitive aspect. So all of that kind of put together was good. And my skill set are systems. So I would take something like building rapport, where, hey, you're supposed to go chit chat, where some people, they could just go sit down with people and talk for days and be just fine. I was not like that. So for me, I would break it down. I'm like, okay, what is building rapport really about? Okay, you're supposed to ask more questions than you talk. You're supposed to find commonalities and find ways to compliment, build trust. So I made it a program to the point where I'm like, what's something that I could do every single time that would make it as easy as possible? And I realized every person I show is a referral. So that was always my go-to question, was like, oh, how do you know Susie? Because that was something I could ask every single time without having to think, and then start building off the follow-up questions. So I'd always look for ways to play to my skill set. And how do I learn this? How do I make it systematic? How do I break it down to make it as easy as possible and repeatable?
Have you always been that way?
Pretty much. That's just kind of a thing. Going back to those shaved ice days, my parents, they would make all the flavor stuff at home, right? And so you're making the flavors. Then they had to put like the sugar in the stuff, and there was so many cups. So they go 1, 2, 3. And finally they're like, okay, you guys are old enough, you're going to do this. And I did that thing once. I'm like, this is stupid. Why do you use an individual cup? If it's 4 cups, just buy a 4-cup thing and do it once, right? That was just kind of the stuff like
Ray Kroc right there, man. It's Ray Kroc thinking.
that's just kind of my So I have plenty of things that are not my strengths, but that's one of my strengths is finding ways to be efficient and optimize and systematic.
And so how long did you do Cutco, and did you continue doing it through college?
Yeah. So I started senior year of high school. I ended up doing it 22 years. So first I'm like, I'm going to pay for school. And then they have this cool program where like, hey, we'll let you go run your own business. So it's almost like franchising, but it's kind of the opposite, where instead of you paying a franchise fee, they give you startup money and they show you how to do it. And back then it was only like $2,500. Now I think the student managers get closer to like 10 grand for going and being a manager to help open up their office. So I'm like, well, I'm a business major at UW. It'd be kind of silly for me if they're giving me this opportunity and I don't take it. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I'll do one summer. And then we finished 3rd in the country out of like 200 offices. We were super close to first. I'm like, all right, I'll run it back. Let's go get the national championship next year. And we did it and we won. We were number 1 for the summer that year. A couple hundred offices, did $500,000 in a summer in Boise, Idaho. And then I graduated 2 months later and they offered me a year-round position. And it was funny. My manager, I wanted to stay in Washington initially, but he got promoted and went down to San Diego. So that I became this kind of free agent. And it was really cool. Like they had all these division managers saying, oh, come to Northern California, come to Southern, you can go to Burbank, you can go to Orange County. And I have a cousin who's like a little sister to me, who lives in Orange County and family down there. And so I went down there and they kind of like took me to the Clippers game and said, here's what you're doing. Back then they had a different pay structure where your signing bonus was based off of how much money you did as a college office. And at the time, I don't know if it still stands, I had done more business as a college student in a summer office than anybody else. So my signing bonus was really nice. And they're like, that's what it'd be. I'm like, done, let's do it. And I moved down to Orange County.
Wow. All right. So I want to run this back because this trend of needing to be number 1 is going to come up again in our interview. What sports did you play growing up? You had to be doing sports.
I played a lot of sports. I started with soccer. I played baseball for a few years, but my favorite player was Darryl Strawberry. And when he got kicked out of the league, I kind of lost interest in that. Okay. I was a football guy from 2nd grade. When I learned football, I remember crying at the end of the season because my mom said season was over. I'm like, football's done, you know? And,
it's over forever.
It's over. And then but then I played from 5th grade through senior year, and I went to UW. So I switched over to the intramural ranks at that point.
At the Huskies, right, of course.
But yeah, we had a great team, though. So I was never the star. I had to work my butt off just to keep up, to keep a starting position. We had a good team growing up. I think from 5th grade to 12th grade, who was just talking to somebody the other day, we lost 7 games.
Wow.
Like our 2 little league teams only lost 1 game each when we played each other. And then those 2 teams formed for our middle schools. So like 7th through 9th, we were undefeated. And then in high school, we lost 5. So we were with some studs. So I was, usually fringe 1st string or 2nd string until like senior year. I was finally starting, both ways on things. So nice. But that competitive aspect shows up a lot.
So you studied business. Was this a general business degree, or was it accounting?
Yeah, I was going to do finance, but I needed to take the 3rd quarter off to go run my Cutco office. So I switched it over to management.
Okay. And so you graduate, you move down to Orange County.
Yep.
And how long were you down there? Were you managing the office? Explain to me how the Cutco system works. You said it's like a franchise. Like when I think franchising, like I have a very particular image in my head. Mm-hmm. Can you explain to me?
Yeah. So the upside is you don't pay the fees and the royalties, right? Mm-hmm. The downside is you don't own it. So if you leave, you can't sell it, right? But you have a territory. So like I moved to Orange County. So first I was a district manager, which means I just had Orange County. So I was responsible for all the recruiting in there. So I would recruit, sales reps, teach them, train them. And then that's how I get paid, is based off of my office performance. Then the division manager is where you're now training other managers, right? And we were in the Western region. I've been part of some really good teams. The Western region was like the number 1 team for 12 years in a row. So none of the division managers were leaving. And I kept getting offers for across the country. And I didn't want to move across the country. So finally they carved out Hawaii. And so I could still keep my office, but I would fly out to Hawaii 5, 6, 7 times a year and train and develop all those managers. So I did that for a couple of years. Great. I mean, I was to 30 to 32 time frame. So awesome opportunity. I love scuba diving and all sorts of stuff. So it was just perfect. In 2012, I got the opportunity to move back home to Washington. And I thought I was going to be in California for like 3 or 4 years. So it ended up being 10. So I was happy to move back home. Family's back here and everything. So at the end of 2012, I moved back to Washington, still with Cutco.
And were you doing a similar role, managing managers?
Yeah. So that way I was responsible for all of Washington and Alaska. And then I still helped out California for a couple of years or for about half a year or so when I moved up, because we had a company, actually Vivint came in and they poached a ton of our managers. They're like, wow, your model is awesome. Your people are talented. We'll pay you a bunch if you come do this. And one fell swoop, they took like half the managers we had for the West Coast. So what's funny, this all ties in because that opened up, they didn't have any leadership in California once I moved to Washington. They said, hey, can you help out from remotely? I said, sure, we'll pay you for it. I'm like, great. And, I saved every dime of that extra money. And that's actually what I ended up using for the down payment for OrangeTheory, was a lot of that extra commission that I had made because all those guys leaving.
So when did OrangeTheory come into the picture for you?
I was about 2014. They had just opened the first one in the spring, I think in April in Washington. I remember I used to play basketball out in the park there, and it was pretty close to the studio. I remember guys pass around flyers and never paid attention. But then my brother fouled. It's funny how the smallest things have the biggest impact. My brother fouled me really hard. I hurt my shoulder. I couldn't lift up my arm. Oof. I put on weight because I couldn't be active. Yeah. And then I got that card again, the OrangeTheory. It's like 3 free workouts. I went in, loved it, cut a bunch of weight for 6-7 weeks. And then I saw them open up their second one about 3 months after I joined. So this is like December 2014. And I said, you know what? This is basically what I do with Cutco. I open up a location, train a manager, and I run it remotely through that manager. This would be like just having another office in the division. So I'm like, let's get into it. My parents had, a handful of single family homes. I'm like, why don't you condense those, sell all of it, and then go into business with me and we can all run it together. And that's what happened.
Okay. And was Bothell the first location?
Bothell was our first location. It was the fourth one in Washington. So I think there was like Shoreline, Redmond, maybe fifth one, I think.
So I interviewed the COO of OrangeTheory, and he recommended I speak to you. I think the Bothell location was the number one OrangeTheory by revenue in the U.S. in 23.
23, we had the top performing. We won the top performance. And there's a couple of metrics that go into it. As far as overall member count and top line revenue and things, I think we were number 2. There's a studio in Queens that they're crazy. The population 15. Yeah, they have like 2 million people in their territory, but I think they've since put another studio or 2 there. But with all the other factors, we won their award at the conference for top performance in 23.
Yeah. So this seems to be a trend for you. Okay, let's go back to Cutco first, and then we'll go into OrangeTheory.
Sure.
What were some of the biggest challenges you faced growing into the roles that you had there and achieving the level of success that you did?
Yeah. I don't like surprises. I don't like surprise parties. I don't like any surprises. So I always like to try to stay ahead of the curve. And so what happened, remember I said that I was getting these offers to division manager and I didn't want to move. But all my buddies across the country were taking these jobs and they were getting it. And I knew that's eventually what I wanted to do. So I was very intentional about saying, how's it going? Like, what's going on? And they're like, wow, it's way tougher than I imagined. I'm like, what is tougher? What are the most challenging tasks that you're doing that you weren't prepared for as a district manager that you now have to do as a division manager? And they would tell me all these different ones. So then what I'd go to my division manager and say, hey, I want to start doing this. I'm basically saying the equivalent of like, I want to mop the floor. Can I come mop your floor? And you're like, well, what? And I'm like, I'll do it for free. I want to get this skill set down. So, and especially my division manager at the time, he hated the admin and some of the part where you're sitting in front of a computer and figure out your mailer accounts and things like that. And I love that stuff. So I'm like, let me do that. I wanted to be super prepared. So I just kept taking, hey, what's all the most challenging parts of it from all my buddies that were experiencing the learning curve firsthand. And then I started developing those skill sets. And that's helped my learning curve going up. The most challenging part for me was moving up here, though, because I got into a a location that I had spent all this time building culture. I had 10 years of culture built there. And I didn't realize how much I leaned on that culture from my top sales reps who they'd show up to the weekly team meeting, not because they were going to learn a ton like all the new reps there, but because they wanted to be a part of it. They knew they loved that big brother, big sister feeling. They're always looking out for other people. And I came up here and that was not in existence. It was really kind of a house of cards that I came into. They divided up Washington and Oregon. It had won the national championship the year before.
Yeah.
But it was just propped up. By the time they told me I was moving in October, by the time I got up there in January, it had gone from 10 to 4 managers. And by the time the summer actually started for us, which is March or May, I think I had 1 or 2 that were left from that fall. It was so starting over from scratch with no culture, with, there was a whole bunch. That's a whole other episode of just there was a lot of chaos coming into that. So that was one of the toughest things, is trying to turn around. And we never turned it around to where we were great. We got it better to where our average manager performance was good. We did some good things. We have some great people, like the guy who's now, I think, taking over Washington. He was one of the people that I developed and trained from scratch from when he was a punk that got fired from Safeway, and now he's going to be running the whole state, I think, here soon. So there's still some really good things that came out of it, but that was tough. And a lot of it was I started getting through that, and then OrangeTheory popped up in 2015, and it really took a lot of my enthusiasm with it.
How do you define culture?
Culture, from like going back to that systematic personality there, is culture is just like that living, breathing thing where I always explain culture to our reps is I want it to be a machine where you can take a brand new person and you throw them in this culture and that will develop them the way you want. So culture is how we our behaviors at work, it's our mindset. It's how we view challenges. It's just how we live, breathe. It's your personality type of the business. And so how you process everything, and except it's cohesive with everybody. So that's the challenge, is everybody thinks differently. Everybody has different ways that they view things. Everybody has different mindsets. So can you get everybody tied into a common goal to, hey, if we want to accomplish the goal, these are the ways we have to think about these things. These are the ways we have to behave. These are the ways we have to perform. And it's nimble or flexible enough to be able to allow for multiple personalities, but it's structured enough where we're all moving in the same direction. So I don't know if that answers it or makes it more confusing, but
No, yeah, it helps. How do you go about codifying that?
So influence for me is one of the best skills I learned with Cutco. And what I learned, especially that, if you're coming in for scratch, it's really hard to influence a group. There's this great YouTube video. I can't remember what it's called, but it's this crazy kid just dancing with his shirt off on a hill. Right.
Okay.
And the guy's narrating it saying there's this lone nut, but then all of a sudden another person comes. Now there's 2 people dancing, and then they celebrate each other. And then they have a third person come in, and then pretty soon this whole hill is dancing. And the point was that just one at a time, it shifted culture to where first everybody's looking at it saying this person's crazy. And if he had said, hey, everybody come dance like an idiot right now and, look crazy with me, that wouldn't have happened. But it happened one at a time to eventually you had more people dancing to where if you weren't dancing, you looked odd. And that's how I think about developing culture and influence is I say, okay, what's the culture that I want? Who's one person that I know that I could get totally bought in with that has a little bit of sway? And I say, hey, you and me, we're going to lock arms. We're going to do this together. This is what we want. This is why we want this. This is how everybody's going to benefit. This is how you're going to benefit. And here's the things you can do to help. Are you game? Let's go. And then it's 2 people. And then I say, okay, who's the next person that has the most influence? And eventually you just drag them one by one. And it really has to be somebody where they're gaining a lot. And I'm going to pour on the recognition. I'm going to preface it and say, this is going to be challenging. This is going to be hard, right? That might even be counter to what some of the other people are doing because they're going to take the easiest path. We're going to do what the best path is. And you might even get pushback like, why are you doing that? It's like, because I want to, this is why, right? And so you really have to make sure that there's something in it for them. And you can make what's in it for them though, right? Even if it's not financial compensation, it can be the recognition, it can be the extra time with you. It can be, hey, what do you really want to gain from this? I'm going to do everything possible to make sure I put you in the best position and putting that extra effort forward. But then eventually you get that team to where pretty soon you have a bigger team that's on point with culture. And then everybody starts pulling in without as much effort. And then eventually you can almost be removed from most of it and it's spinning as long as the right people are in place. And you put the new person in and the culture spins.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a compounding element.
Yeah, totally.
Right.
Snowball rolling down a hill.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. And over time, the largest gains occur with fraction of the effort that the initial
Yeah.
1 to 2 doubles took just to get it
But the inverse of that in the beginning is the initial effort is way more than the immediate results.
Yeah.
And that's why most people do it. Is they put in the effort and say, this isn't worth it. I'm working way too hard. I'm spending so much time with this one person. We're talking about these things. I keep promoting this vision. It's not happening right away. It's not going. And, we always learned promotion and things were a lot like those old school water pumps where, you pump the water, and if you pump it a few times, nothing happens.
Nothing happens. Yeah.
And so you're like, this doesn't work. And then you see somebody else and like their water pump's working. And I say, okay, I'll try it a few times. No, it still doesn't work. You have to just believe and have that blind faith. Eventually it's going to happen. It's just not right away.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like a lot of things in life are that way, from fitness to business to even media. Like I'm starting this podcast, and it's so easy to look and see like channels or shows that have millions of followers, and you put in a ton of work and you're like, oh, getting a few. It's like, dude, you got to, it's honestly, it's a game of attrition.
Yeah.
It's a game of attrition, right? Those who stick around end up with large followings, end up with large net worths, end up with fit bodies, because like you just said, the amount of effort you put in, you're not going to get back the amount of effort you put in initially, but eventually you get back multiples more than what you're putting in to maintain it.
Yep, exactly. It's an invisible line. You don't know when you cross it until you cross it, right?
You don't know when you cross it.
You don't know how far away it is. It could be an inch in front of you. It could be 10 miles, right?
Yeah. So tell me about building first Bothell and the headwinds that you had to overcome to get Bothell off the ground. Let's focus on that one first, then we'll bring in Renton.
Yeah. So Bothell, we started at a sweet spot. I mean, as much as I'd like to say like, oh, we did all these things that made us crush it. Like we signed our papers when there was 150 OrangeTheories. Within 3 years, there was 900. So we started huge. We also were at like the golden age of Facebook advertising, where now Facebook ads are much tougher, like a much smaller percentage of leads are coming from your local Facebook stuff. So I'll preface that. But when I started with OrangeTheory, one of the weaknesses I felt they had were their sales training, right? And just kind of processes. I think at the time it was like, how do you track your guest was, oh, you take a notebook and you write each day for there and you write down who's coming. I'm like, what is going on there? So another franchisee I started with, he had worked with Microsoft. He was great with Google Sheets. So he made a Google Sheet of tracking. I put my couple tweaks on it, but I used that to really help us. And we did a good job. Another thing, going back to Cutco, a lot of people will say, hey, man, I keep meeting all these great people that had Cutco experiences. Well, because all the top people flocked together and we would learn from each other and forge these great relationships. So like Lifestyle Investor now, I'm there because Justin's one of my old Cutco buddies. I've known him for 25 years. Right. But he was one of the best there was. And so I tried to do that with OrangeTheory, where when we started, I tried to build these good relationships with these other great owners that all had these awesome skill sets. Like Spokane people opened just before us. So we flew over there. We watched their pre-sales. Remember, I don't like surprises. So I wanted to start seeing what's pre-sales look like. What challenges are you dealing with? We borrowed the intro tracker Google sheet from the guy down in Oregon, right? And we worked together with what we could, but we crushed sales. We did good with sales. So I think when Bothell opened, we opened with 700 members. And at the time it was maybe top 10 pre-sales, something like that, back in 2016. So things were great. And, I did all the hiring then. And I think by the time we hit July, half of our management staff were personally recommended by somebody else that had worked, or our staff there was recommended by somebody else. Like my receptionist from Cutco recommended somebody on their volleyball team, or recommended somebody else on their volleyball team, and they both worked. And our studio manager recommended somebody, and then she recommended two other of the coaches. And one of our coaches was a guy I played high school football with. So it was just that new, exciting, fun thing. And we had just a great crew, and that helped really kick it off and kind of set the foundation for what Bothell would become.
So can you get into some of the specifics in terms of the tactics you used to pre-sell 700 members before, like at opening?
Yeah. So a lot of it was just the sales training of making, with Cutco, you have to sell in a way you're dependent on referrals. So if you just focus on, I'm going to sell as much as I can to this person, you might rub them the wrong way. You might not be helping what they really want. And then when at times they get to referrals, nothing. And now you're dead in the water. So you have to learn to sell in a way that the person really enjoys. They enjoy the whole process. It feels good. Maybe you're not maximizing every dollar of commission you're getting, but you're setting yourself up for the long term. And that's what I wanted to bring in there. I wanted to make sure our people knew how to do referrals. I wanted to also look at the comp models of how we compensate people. So most studios were doing, here's their general booking link, set up appointment. I made individual booking links for each one of our salespeople. So when they would, when they would do an appointment with somebody and sell membership, they say, hey, we're just opening. Here's my individual schedule. Do you think you could share it with 5 or 6 people? And that way they're more motivated to ask for the referrals, because it's a little scary to ask for referrals the first time until you get it down. But because of that link, it would only show their schedule. So they knew that would book them more appointments and give them more commission versus just, hey, do you have any referrals? That's going to go to the pot. I don't know who's going to sell to them. So little things like that. But we did online booking scheduling, which wasn't a big thing. Like now Calendly and stuff's out there. And we were using like youcanbook.me or something at that time. I didn't even know what Calendly was back then. And that was something that wasn't the norm at the time. But that was the big thing. I'd love to say we crushed guerrilla marketing and stuff. And we did that, but I don't think we were excellent at those things. So we did Facebook. We did a great job selling and great job driving referrals from the people we were working with.
Where did the initial seed of customers come from which you got referrals? Was this friends, family, like neighbors?
A little
like
bit, but it's really,
what was it?
It's really, the Facebook advertising and going out and trying to get flyers and stuff out there. It's funny that the spot we moved into, and again, so much as it's just dumb luck. Like we had an LOI for the spot in Woodinville. So you're a Washington guy, and that was our territory. We had an LOI for like 3 months. I'm like, what is going on? This is taking way too long. And what had happened is they had sold the whole property during the process of our LOI. The new owner came in and said, I don't want a fitness place there. I want a restaurant there, and then booted us. So he just wasted 4 or 5 months of us. Yeah. Then this spot opened up in Bothell. Was way less in rent, by the way, because there was nothing in the whole center at the time. Everything was under construction. So we actually got a better, at least the only thing, we were next to a Radio Shack, a Brooks, and a Rite Aid. That's all that was there. Wasn't the best tenant anchors because the other stuff was in construction. Yeah. So we're like, whatever, we've been waiting for a year and a half to get our spot. Let's go. So we go there. We open up in May. By June, the Petco is now finished. By a month after, the salon with the Phoenix Salons is right next. And then another month later, so the PCC organic grocery store is open. After this, right?
Oh man, that's the Trinity there.
It didn't help us during pre-sales because none of it was open, right? There's some weird stuff going on at Radio Shack next door. That was about all the foot traffic. And my people are out there in like January and February, like freezing, we had some just troopers, and really it's just some great people. One of them still actually a coach at the Renton studio, who did a majority of that Bothell pre-sales. And, but then it popped up and it was a good spot.
How did you find your coaches?
One from anywhere and everywhere. We placed ads. So let's see, the initial ones, one I knew from high school. One was recommended by the studio manager's girlfriend, who was a sales associate, recommended him. He was fantastic. He runs his own spot in Linwood now. My coach, they bought Elevate Fitness in Bellevue. He married my Renton studio manager a while back ago, and they bought the Elevate Fitness in Bellevue, who was actually started by our first head coach in Bothell. Weird, incestuous thing here. But our head coach came from Arizona. She saw that OrangeTheory was popping up. She was former OrangeTheory. I think we had 2 off of ads, and then one of them, she saw us open and came and delivered her resume and said, I'd love to do fitness there. And she'd worked at one that was down in Kirkland at the time and wanted to do something different.
At what point did you decide to expand to Renton?
So my dad's really conservative. And so talking him into selling the rentals and going on this OrangeTheory thing was tough. And I was finally getting them to like, okay, I think we're going to do this. I remember I was flying to a buddy's bachelor party in Cabo, and I'm talking to him right before I'm getting on the plane. And he's like, okay, I think we're ready to go. We agree. And I'm like, okay, good, Dad. I'm like, I actually just talked to the area rep and they said they won't let us buy just 1 license. We have to buy 2. But I got to jump on the plane. I'll talk to you in a few days.
Bye.
Jump nuts. Give him a few days to process it. But we had to buy 2 to start. And it depends on the area rep. Our guy made us buy 2 because he didn't want to have 1 studio owners. And I didn't know anything about franchising in there. And when people ask me now, having 2 is not great franchise strategy. Your exit strategy is not very good that way. And whether you want to hold them forever, whatever, you should have at least a potential exit strategy. So you're not going to get any good multiples with 2 studios. You need 3 to 5 to have a much better multiple. If you can have some white space where you have a license to unopen one, that's also a great way to increase that multiple. So, and especially when you have 2 top performing, there's no growth left. Like if you max them out.
Yeah.
So
What
like,
else can you do?
yeah, right now after COVID, we definitely have some growth stuff, but just going back thinking about that, I've probably done a little differently because we knew nothing about franchising when we got in. But it's been great. It's been, we're happy with the studios.
I assume you never coached in the studios. Did you ever coach?
I did 5 minutes when a guy didn't show up for the 5 a.m. class once, but that's about it.
So you're a true owner. Describe to me your management structure. So I'm assuming you're the CEO of the management group. You probably have an LLC that owns these locations. And do you have general managers at each of the locations that report to you? What is the ownership structure?
Yeah. So for the longest time, it was basically, so our owner group, me and my mom and dad, we actually work really well together. I'm sales, marketing, ops. My mom does all the admin stuff. There's a lot of stuff she still likes to do her old way, like balance the checkbook the old fashioned way. I'm like, Mom, we have the QuickBooks report. We can just print out, but she likes to do it the way she does. And then my dad is great with facility maintenance, like to a point where I'm like, Dad, we can hire somebody to paint. Like 2 days ago, he was in the studio till 11 o'clock at night painting touch-up stuff. And my dad's 73, has Parkinson's, but he's like Mr. Miyagi. Like he will do everything on there. He doesn't want to pay anybody. He wants to do it all because it's actually easier for him, because otherwise he'd sit there and watch them and like tear them apart. And this guy's awful. We paid $4,000 for it. But he was really instrumental, especially when we created the studios, like which materials to use in the construction process. But now it's like our studios are some of the cleanest studios. They still train the cleaners and do all that stuff. So we work really well together. Then each studio has a studio manager who really runs the studio, and then a head coach who's really in charge of the coaching, hiring the coachings and things. So our studio managers, I would say, do more than most OrangeTheory studio managers. We give them a lot more. We try to compensate them better as well, but they also have a lot more autonomy. I don't ask for reports sent every week. If I want a report, I'll just look it up, right? There's a lot of things I hear some of the other owners do that I don't want to spend the time. Honestly, I trust them enough where I feel like they're going to be using their time in the most valuable way, because they're also compensated for it as well. So we have a lot of performance based, and even their salary can jump up with member count. They have, a potential revenue bonus and sales bonuses. So everything's somewhat tied to performance. So they are incentivized to do better, right? As well as possible. So we try to be hands off. Recently, though, what we've done, because we haven't been making it to the studio as often as we want, which normally we're going twice a month, each studio twice a month. And I've been traveling more, so I haven't even been able to do that. So we've just switched to have a GM now. So we took our Bothell studio manager, who was the top studio manager and one of the best, I would say probably the best studio manager operationally in OrangeTheory. That's cool. She just knows the stuff in and out. So we put her into the GM spot. Now she can assist those studio managers and give them a lot more attention than what we were giving. So especially Renton, I mentioned that studio manager that opened up Elevate Fitness. She was fantastic. She was our initial studio manager in Renton all the way until September of 21. And that's when they left to go buy that other one, which we supported. I went to their wedding. They're a fantastic couple. And she was great there. But then we had a little bit newer studio manager who was the assistant manager initially before. And so she was still learning. So it's nice now to have that GM give her more support, because at the time when she became a studio manager, there's so much has grown with OrangeTheory, so many programs and online platforms and everything. I couldn't tell you how to do the studio manager job myself, right? So it's been really helpful having that new structure. And that's recent within the last couple months.
Okay. If you feel, to the degree that you feel comfortable, and we can cut this out if you don't feel comfortable, I'd love to know how much capital acquiring the territories and building out the initial locations costs. So both equity, but then also if you use debt, like how much total, but also equity. And so I want to show where you started. So we started with this much capital and we've grown it to either revenue range, or I know you're not a public company and you're probably not for sale. So I don't know if you know a market cap or evaluation, but I'd love to see kind of the delta between how much you started with and what you think it's worth or what it's about doing today.
So when we did our franchise disclosure agreements and all that stuff at the time, they were estimating it was going to cost $400,000 to $600,000 to open a location full boat, right? It was about double that. So the build out in Washington State alone was, close to $500,000. And so Washington State had I remember talking to a guy in Virginia, and our construction costs were 50% higher than his.
Jeez.
And he'd built out multiple studios, and we'd worked with somebody who helped contract, like GC, all of the studios. So it wasn't like we just got an expensive person. That's what the price was.
Mm-hmm.
Again, my dad is not a big debt person. So we didn't take a ton of debt, but we did a little bit of an SBA. We did a grandma loan in there. So I think we had a loan for about 300-ish. And then we put most of the rest in ourselves. Mm-hmm. I think my parents even did an extra $100K loan or something based off of that was more on top of their equity. It's funny. The first one, we went in 60-40 because we figured I'd be doing more. And then after the first one, there you go. We're working way too hard. So the second one was 50-50. I was like, that's fine. But then that was like, we were tapped. That was more than what we really had. So what the nice part about Renton was that we couldn't find a good location. There's down in the land, Renton, the landing's perfect. LA Fitness had a non-compete, so you can't be in the landing. So there's not a great other location. So we could be downtown somewhere. We looked at some spots there and they just didn't find anything. And the Highlands is where more of the people, it's more of the neighborhoods, but there's less opportunities. There's less spaces up there. So it took us a long time to find a spot, which was great because we were then able to just take all the money from Bothell and we pretty much pushed that all into Renton.
Cash flow.
And we basically paid for Renton with Bothell because we opened about 2 years later. So we only had to do a smaller loan there. I think we did like a 150 loan or something like that. And we took a smaller loan for that one. And by October of 2018, again, my dad's Mr. Conservative. We didn't take any cash distributions until the loans were paid. Minus a little bit to pay taxes for 2016 and 17. By the fall of 2018, we were debt free.
Got it.
And then we started taking distribution.
Were you profitable within a year and a half, 2 years?
Profitable as far as monthly cash flow going, immediately, right? Sure. We were profitable to break even what our startup cost was.
Yeah.
Depends how you look at the startup costs, right? Is the money you made from Bothell also startup costs, or is that revenue, right? But basically, if you just take...
Let's just talk Bothell.
Yeah.
Just Bothell alone. That was true zero.
Yeah. If you take the initial part we put in, after we paid off debt, after we made back what we all initially put in,
the equity, yeah,
I would probably say that was maybe spring of 2019.
Okay.
So 3 years later or so from starting day one. And I mean, we'd say, but we had to put some down in 15, obviously building up to the launch, but about 3.5 to 4 years, maybe at the most.
Yeah. You got all your capital back and now it's just
capital back and cash flowing.
Yeah.
And then that's where with Cutco, I still have some of that conservativeness from my dad where, we started taking these distributions in 18. I'm like, these are great. And I'm like, I think I'm going to make way more than what I'm working with Cutco, but let's give it a year. So I said, we'll do two. So in 2019, I'm working full time with Cutco, 2 studios open. We're having our second child, a lot going on.
Jeez.
And by end of August, I'm like, each of these studios is probably going to make more than what I'm making with my job. I was doing okay, but it wasn't anything crazy because I put almost everything I had into the first studio, right? Yeah. So I told the managers, I said, I'm going to leave. And so I said, let's do a transition period for the fall. We can get the next person ready or whatever. And then January 2020, I said, I'm retiring. I'm leaving Cutco. I'm done. I'm going to spend time with my family and the studios are paying the bills and we'll be good. And then 2 months later, COVID hit and studio shut down for a year. So timing is a little weird, but everything works out for a reason, right? And it ended up being one of the best things with that timing.
What was so great about COVID for you?
There was not a lot that was great during the year that I got, again, the water pump, the results that are happening. So going back to that mentality of I knew that this was going to be my worst income year ever. I'd never had a year where I lost a lot of money. I'd always made something since I was 10, not let alone tens of thousands of dollars eating away from savings. Right.
Yeah.
And so I kept telling myself, I'm like, I need to be intentional. So I want to be able to look back and say, if it wasn't for COVID, we wouldn't be here. And I wanted here to be higher than if COVID never happened.
Okay.
Now,
let's go. Yeah. All right. I love that mindset.
Now, I didn't know how it was going to happen. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I'm like, I just need to start learning stuff. I don't have anything to do. I left my job. My businesses are closed. I'm like smoking on Friday, right? And so basically I just started learning. So Justin Donald reached out to me. He said, hey, I'm going to do an investment happy hour. I have 5 or 6 buddies where we're just looking at deal flow. Do you want to join in? I'm like, yes. So I was in the first 5 or 6 people. That's what turned into Lifestyle Investor. I got in touch with Eric Van Horn, who's in the franchising world and now has one of the biggest franchise Facebook groups, Franchise Secrets and Franchise Secrets podcast. And he's like, how did your Orange Theories do so well? I was like, I just taught him to sell. And he's like, tell me what you're talking about. And I told him my philosophy. He's like, we need to teach that. And that spawned Real Business Solutions on, I was doing sales training for franchisees during COVID and trained 60 different franchise owners and their staffs. I started learning Facebook ads and I did Ryan Levesque's online coaching, marketing coaching. I'm not an online person. I didn't have a podcast. I didn't have any online, but I wanted to learn that stuff. That turned into the skill set that I use a lot now with Lifestyle Investor and running that company, of knowing how online and media and membership groups and all those things and pricing and advertising and all that works. So all of those things started coming into play. And I can say, easily 3 years after COVID that I'm in a better spot now. Maybe not 100% financially, but I probably about the same, but especially with future opportunity than I would have been if there was no COVID. So I thought it would be more like 5 or 10 year kind of timeline. That was what I was telling myself. But with the things that I've learned, the knowledge I've gained, like being involved with Lifestyle Investor, I've always fairly savvy financially and learning, saving and investing. But I've learned more the last 5 years with that than in my entire life by multiples. Just next level stuff that I've learned with working with Lifestyle Investor. In the franchise world, I'm fairly well known in the Franchise Secrets world from doing a lot of the sales training and help out there. Yeah. I've been on his podcast a few times to help, but a lot of opportunities came out of COVID.
So now I've got a bunch of follow-up questions. Let's start first. Let's start first with Lifestyle Investor. Share with us what that is.
So Lifestyle Investor, our goal is to become the best financial education communities. At first we were saying companies, but information is cheap now with AI. So we're all about community. It started with that investor happy hour where there's 5 or 6 people. Justin would email us pitch decks of 3 different deals on Monday, and Friday we'd grab a beer or a glass of wine on Zoom during COVID and talk about the deals and kind of pick them apart and vet them. Yeah.
Are these private equity deals?
All private alternate. So not necessarily private equity. They could be real estate, like an industrial deal, industrial development, early SaaS companies, all sorts of stuff. So a little bit of everything. Then he started inviting more people and eventually got to 9 to 15 to 30. And then in September, he launched a mastermind and there was about 23 or so people that joined. And I'm like, hey, I'm not doing anything. I'll help you. So I was always kind of helping in the background. And then it got to 50 to 70. And then it got out of hand because it was just him and an EA running this in about 1,000 Google Docs. And he kept saying, he's like, can you run it? And at the end of 2020, I needed help. Like I needed something because my payout for my job was done. We still weren't open. There was no second round of PPP coming. Yeah. But I said, no, I don't want it because I need it. I need to do this on my own. So I kept turning them down. And then it wasn't until studios got back up in 21. We got cooking by going into 22. We're back and we're healthy and we're strong. And then finally the spring of 22, he asked me to do it again. And I told him no again. And then these EOS implementers were doing a consultation with us. And they're like, well, Ryan, do you want to be the integrator? I'm like, no. And they're like, okay, we'll do it. I was like, what? I thought you were EOS implementers. Like, oh, we also do fractional roles. I'm like, well, that's convenient. And I'm like, Justin, shouldn't we hire somebody? He's like, no, let's give him a chance. He says yes to everything. I give him about 2 weeks. And I'm like, this is a disaster. We need somebody internally. I'm like, all right, Justin, I'll do it. And that's finally, I jumped in. So it was about 3 years ago now that I took the COO role. But basically what we do is we have a couple different masterminds, but in that mastermind, it's an annual fee. The Lifestyle Investor is $55,000 a year. So this isn't a group it's well off. But what we do is we spend about $300,000 on due diligence. So we'll bring in deals. We'll bring about 20 deals a year. We don't do any SPVs. We don't do a carry. We don't make a dime off of people's deals. Nobody can pay us to present a deal, which is different than a lot of other investment groups out there. They're like, hey, we'll teach you about investing and you can invest with us. That's biased in our opinion. So, but then we also bring in tax strategists, estate planners. We even have health and longevity stuff. So when people work with us, we have a couple partnerships where they can get a free blood panel and stuff. Because lifestyle investing is about investing where you have the utility of your investments now. Like why put everything in a bank, hope it goes up till you're 65, and then, you live off of it and hope you die before it runs out, right? That's not good thinking. We want to focus on cash flow investing to where your expenses are covered, right? Work is now optional. You follow your passions, you do what you want to do, you have utility in that. You're still growing your money, but you have that utility now. Maybe you don't need it. Maybe you love your career, but it's nice to have that option to say, hey, if I didn't want to work, tomorrow I could be done and I have my investments and our lifestyle covered passively. So I'm going to focus on spending my time where I want to spend my time, whether that's family, charity, just doing good work that brings you energy, right? So that's what lifestyle investing is all about. So we have a couple different masterminds. We have a free community where people can go and talk about it. His book, this all happened by accident. He wrote the book because one of his friends told him, hey, what if you died and you never got a chance to share all this stuff with your daughter? And that hit him hard. So he's like, okay, I'll write the book. And then he started the group right before the book came out. The book came out, the group blew up, and this big accident has now become a nice little company.
Like, do they clump around different types of either industry types? So for example, we're seeing a lot of SaaS companies. We're seeing a lot of residential real estate deals. We're seeing a lot of storage facilities. We're seeing a lot of food franchises. Like, are there specific verticals that tend to come up more often than others?
No. A lot real estate, but real estate funds. So we'll see industrial funds, mobile home park funds. Yeah, some individual projects, but funds usually have a little less risk. So we're much more about let's not lose our principal, then let's go hit these home runs. Like, you're not going to come invest in our deals because you're going to make twice as much as another deal. Now, do we have some of them that will project a 15 to 20% IRR and then end up paying 30 to 40%? Yeah, they do, but they're not going to come in saying you're going to get 35% IRR. Like, if somebody said that off the bat, that's a huge red flag right at the beginning. So what we really teach is starting with your goals. Like, what kind of life do you want to live? Because investing is just to fuel your life. So if you start with the investing piece, you don't know where you're going, right? So get what kind of goals, what kind of cash flow do you need? And then we really work on helping create an asset allocation that fits that. So what would be your asset allocation? And especially looking at, family offices and the ultra wealthy, not what you're hearing on CNBC, right? CNBC is bought and paid for by financial industry. Throw all your money in the stock market, put it under assets under management, 60-40, that stuff's retail. And that's the people that benefit the most are the people who are selling it to you, right? So do what the really rich people are doing. And, stock market, it's like 20% or less of most of their portfolios. And usually that's just to leverage to buy other alternate assets, right? So we teach asset allocation and here's some ranges. So based on your goals, what range fits you the best? Now with that, let's develop your personal investment criteria of, what are the checklists that an investment would have to check for you to say yes to it. So we put our deals through a lot of scrutiny before we put them in front of our members, but they still have to do their own due diligence. And just because a deal is right for one person doesn't mean it's right for another person. And then I've even kind of developed I just started doing webinars on this for the group. I try to stay behind the scenes. Justin's the guy up front, but I'll do some stuff. And then our fourth layer is more of like, okay, now this is a specific asset class. What additional criteria would you have? So we kind of have this 4 layers to how we teach investment criteria. And then you throw tax strategy on it. And when you really start doing tax strategy, that's the biggest ROI of all of it. You make 15% instead of 12%. Okay, that's cool. But you save 6 figures on taxes annually, no money out of pocket. That's immediately investable. And then you start investing that and you compound it. That's where some real huge gains are made. And the tax strategy, most people don't use it. Most people are reactive with tax strategy. They're not proactive. Their tax strategy is how much do I need to pay? And I'll start saving for that now or pay quarterly versus where can I invest my money? What can I do with my business? Let me use the tax code to actually optimize how much I'm going to take home each month or each year. Right? And let's think proactively of this. How much money can I get into these tax-free vehicles, like a whole life policy or a Roth or a backdoor Roth, like all those different things. So it's not just minimizing your tax burden for the year you're in, but thinking for years to come, how do I avoid taxes for as much as possible? Because, I think you should pay what's fair, but I don't want to tip the government. I don't feel like they do a great job spending our money, right? So
yeah,
sorry, that was a long tangent. We were all over.
I know. Well, this is interesting though. And the point of this pod is to help business owners make as much money as possible so they can change as many lives as possible. And this is a part of it, right? Your business should serve your life. And so,
well, going back to that one quick thing, what you just said there, when you're expenses are covered from passive income and you're not relying on your business, it's amazing how different that makes your decisions in your business for the long-term health of it versus making short-term, I need to do this because that. And we've hit that a couple times. It's scary. So
100%. So this is relevant. That's what I'm trying to say. This is definitely relevant. I want to clarify what the lifestyle investor is not. So it's not an RIA, correct?
It's not an RIA. It's not a fund. It's not something
not a
you invest
broker-dealer.
in. No, it's not a broker dealer. It's a community. It's a community you have to apply to get into. We have a couple different levels. We just started one this last year for young adults, taking kind of that Cutco knowledge of let's develop people in their 20s that are buying. With one young woman, she just bought her first business. She's 25, bought a business down in La Jolla. And a lot of them have their first rental properties. They're in young 20s or early 30s and just starting to Airbnb. So we have a couple different communities. And then we just have the open community, which is kind of a free community where people would get Lifestyle Investor and go to their neighbor and like, hey, I'm thinking about a whole life policy and how I can build my passive cash flow. And their neighbor will look at them like they're talking another language and say, where can I go to talk to other people that want to talk about this stuff? And so that's why we have the free community there. Anybody that's bought the book, or they can do free invites. And we have some education stuff that pops in there. Justin's usually not in there much at all, but we do some education calls and things there.
Where is the expertise coming from to develop the tax strategies, asset allocation? Because typically I'm thinking you're going to have someone either on the tax strategy side, someone who's done tax accounting or who's done tax planning, estate planning. And then on the asset allocation side, I'm thinking like CFA, CFP. And then on the deal diligence, I'm thinking, have you have an investment banking background, private equity? So like these are fairly technical.
Totally. It's not us is the first answer, right?
Okay.
We're not doing all of that for sure. So like our due diligence team, we have an in-house real estate guy who's a syndicator himself, CPA background, is just nails. And then we outsource the rest of it to a company that's hired by family offices to vet deals. They do it professionally.
Got it.
And then where most of the people come from are Justin's connections. So he's in all these different groups. He's in Tiger 21, Post-Exit Founders. He's a great investor. He's best at connecting with people. Like for the last 20 something years, he's been intentional about going and having lunch with somebody new every week, meeting different people, getting into these rooms. And that's where a lot of these connections come from. He's very intentional, like who's best in class with this, who's best in class with this. And then talking to the best in class person, who's even better. And those are the types of speakers that we bring in. So like the estate planning attorney that we have come in and speak, and that like works with more billionaires across the country than any other estate planner. So it's not us teaching that stuff. But Justin is more of this is not a guru group. This is Justin's a member. He's the facilitator. And we bring in experts for everything.
He's connecting. He's connecting. He's giving I don't want to say average Joes, but like people access to high level expertise that they otherwise would have difficulty accessing.
100%.
Right. That's great. That's a huge value. Where are you taking your OrangeTheory holdings, and what metrics do you look at to determine their success, like to measure their success?
Yeah, so it's a membership model. So it's like membership, overall revenue, and like expenses are growing. Washington, our minimum wage is going up 9% this year in Washington. Right, it's crazy. We're like our rent in studios below COVID numbers by far still. And so even in the last couple of years, OrangeTheory as a company has had some learning curves and some struggles the last couple of years. Like we went through this merger with Anytime Fitness. So they're still kind of structuring who's in charge, who's doing what. Last year, I think we went most of the year without a CMO. So our marketing is kind of all over the place. We're kind of getting back for that. So
that's huge. Because when I think OrangeTheory, I think marketing personally.
Right. And so we're getting backed on place. I mean, some of the biggest owners were having big time troubles with some of the private equity owners, which I feel like is probably going to be a long-term good thing, but it's going to hurt in the short. Like there's locations that have shut down, but these were some companies where I've heard some horror stories about what it was like working with them as a small owner when they had your territory. Like we're a small guy. The other group in our area is 18. They're cool to work with. They're fine. They're helpful, right? I mean, they obviously care about their studios a lot more than our two, right? So, but that's, I wouldn't expect anything less. But I've heard some horror stories of some of these other ones working with, and now some of them are getting shaken out a little bit, right? Where the private equity guys that expanded big going into 1920 and got some big time loans, right? They're hurting. So hopefully some of these locations will either shut down and strengthen the other ones close by. It sucks for the member who lives right next to that studio that has to close down. But hopefully what will happen is as OrangeTheory gets back on track and some of these other locations, maybe they get peeled off and sold to people that care more about the communities of each one versus let's just look at our financial lens on a private equity calculator, that we'll see more of that OrangeTheory community coming back. So, I mean, you can kind of tell in some studios of what's a family owned and what's not, which studios are lacking a little attention. And I think it's, the pendulum is swinging back. I think we hit the private equity peak where it's like, okay, and I'm sure there's going to be some private equity company. It's like, hey, I'm going to come in, I'm going to buy low right now because I can see this coming back with a vengeance. And now is a perfect time. But I think it's going to be more about the smaller owners really pouring in, OrangeTheory listening to those people, which we have. Like we started an OrangeTheory best practices group. So I meet monthly with about 22 owners. We have about 73 studios, and we've had almost every member of the executive board be a guest on our monthly call. They're starting to listen a little bit more of what, and it's paying off, and it feels good as a franchisee to be listened to. Because just as even if our studios do well, if I only own 2 locations, I'm a mouse squeaking over here. But when we have a group, we have a couple of on the franchise advisory council, and we're not just about stuff. We're channeling like, okay, what are our best ideas? What's working with us? How can we channel that up to corporate and talk to them so we can make that? What are they putting out that is not good on the operating? Like they thought it was a good idea, but they're not actually executing it. We're executing it. That is not working. Let's channel that feedback back to them on how we can adjust it. And we're starting to see better feedback loop with that.
Where is Ryan Casey in 5 and then 10 years? What are you aiming for? The future is unknown, but what are you aiming for?
Yeah. So, I mean, COVID remember, I started I put everything I had into OrangeTheory, 15, 16. Didn't take any money. 19, I made some decent money. COVID then hit, pulling back. So my first goal is to get my passive in, passive. And the OrangeTheory is semi-passive, but I want passive. That's what I'm focused on. That's why I love Lifestyle Investor. OrangeTheories will probably keep. And, my daughter was just at the member meetup, and she was saying hi to everybody. She's been in the studio since she was a baby. I mean, members were passing her. She is 6 months younger than the studio. She used to stand in front of the class and high five everybody when they went in when she was 2 years old. They're all over the social media. So I love it as an opportunity for them to be involved with. So we'll probably have the studios. I'll probably be less and less involved though, and just keep more and more dependent on the GM and try to get in there to be personal touches with the staff. But as far as the business stuff, just kind of let them run with it. Lifestyle Investor is one of my big passions. I want to grow this we want to kind of have that rich dad, poor dad impact on the world, where when people look back and say, that book that really changed me was that Lifestyle Investor book, which feel like we're taking Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Now, nowadays, it can't just be a book, though, because you can just say, what's the AI summary of it?
Totally.
And get the book knowledge.
Yep. You gotta have full media presence.
Yeah. So for us, it's the community aspect. I want that free community to 5 years from now, 10 years from now, be hundreds of thousands, millions of people, where we're bringing in guest speakers for anybody there. But then we always have that inner circle mastermind. Like, we don't want to scale it more than 175 people. That is just the inner circle. We have 2 masterminds. One's a little bit lower level where it's about half of everything. They get about half the deal flow, half the cost. They're not investing quite as much as that main group. But those ones we want to keep small. I would love to scale the young adults group of like that to where it's, like an EO, there's chapters, or YPO, there's chapters all over, and that's thousands. So we're really helping people as they're young adults coming out of college or even in college, making their first investments, thinking with that lifestyle investor mentality, to where I'm working on my daughter's reading first the rough draft of a lifestyle investor kids book for 7 to 13-year-olds. Where imagine people coming out in their 20s where their investments are making more than their expenses. And their view is, I don't want to increase my expenses more than what my investment is. And so that way I can just focus on my passion. If I'm passionate about being a doctor, I'm going to go do it. I don't care if I'm not making money because I have student loans at the beginning. It's going to take me this long. I got that covered. Like, I want to do this and focus on, what people are passionate about. So that's 5-10 years from now, we want to really grow Lifestyle Investor. I want to set a good example of, hey, I own a successful business. I have my family involved in it. It's not, I don't own the OrangeTheory just because it makes a bunch of money. It's something because the family is involved. It fits with my passions. So that's what I want to be doing 5-10 years from now, and just have my kids more and more involved. I'm very big on hands-on with a kid. I have a very small, like we were trying to schedule the podcast, I have a small work box. Sometimes I feel like I'm standing on top of the garbage can, jumping on it to fit everything into that work box. But I try to honor that to really make sure that most of my time is spent with family and kids. I'm there first.
That's awesome. Well, you have your priorities straight. This has been a pleasure. I'm going to check out this book. The Lifestyle Investor. Just like you mentioned, Rich Dad Poor Dad was the first book I read
You got it.
that opened my eyes to this world of business. When I was in college, I was not studying business. I studied applied health science. Fitness has always been my passion. But I read this thing about assets and liabilities. And I was like, what? How come no one It was like taking the red pill. I was like, what? There's this whole game going on that I didn't know about.
Totally.
And everything changed from there.
Well, I'll do I've slacked on it, but I was doing like this Washington meetup where I know a handful of people from different pockets, different franchisees, different OrangeTheory owners, different old Cutco, different, investor group. And so I just did kind of like a happy hour, like, hey, let's get together and hang out. I haven't done one this year yet. So we'll have to invite you next one. I'll snag a couple copies.
Absolutely. Let's definitely stay connected. I'm going to literally, is there an audio for this audiobook? For the
Yeah.
Okay.
Audible book. He just did the updated and expanded version at the beginning of this year, I think. That's when it came.
Perfect. And I'll probably join at least the free group to start out with.
For sure.
And we'll stay in contact, man, for sure.
All right. Well, this was a blast.
So as we're talking through the Lifestyle Investor, Ryan, I want to get some of your favorite books that have both informed you as part of this group and also away from this group. So you mentioned, go through.
What Would the Rockefellers Do with Garrett Gunderson? That is huge with how we've structured whole life policies and things like that, getting kids set up for work and utilizing those for the future. Entrusted by York and Howell. Those are actually some of the estate planning attorneys that we've used before. They're fantastic. Will Duffy has a couple cool on like Ross for the Rich on like kind of backdoor policies. And then also how to, I think buying your first home, of really thinking about interest rates. Like once you become familiar with rates and things, like I see people that have 2.8% mortgages and they're paying them down. Like my parents were doing that at first. I'm like, what are you doing? They're like, well, we don't want a loan. I'm like, okay, that's fine. We'll put it into high interest savings at least. That's making 4 or 5%, and then you can pay it off whenever you want. But don't pay down at 2.8. But like there's some books like that. Those were a couple. One of my newer favorite ones is the Real Estate Side Hustle. I've gotten to know Devon Kennard a little bit. He's a former NFL player, retired a couple years ago. But while he was in the NFL, built up a huge real estate portfolio. So did it actively, passively, and then went back to now he's doing it more actively, but through a team. And just real savvy, and one of the nicest guys ever. But that's a great book for if you're like a W-2 or you're somebody who like, I have too much going on to invest in real estate, read that book, because that's a great one for those. So those are a couple that come to top of mind.
Awesome. We'll definitely include those in the show notes and as well as a link to the Lifestyle Investors. So, all right, Ryan, thank you, man.
It sounds great.
Subscribe to the Eden Group podcast on YouTube. Make sure you click the notification button to be notified whenever a new episode is posted. If you're listening to the podcast on a podcast player, make sure you rate and review the show so that it is easier to find for future viewers.